and Debbie Martin from Grace Ministries or Grace Fellowship of Central Illinois. He actually acts as apostle for that entire region of the country and doing a mighty work in that area. And the miracles God's done with him recently. He was in heart failure Thanksgiving weekend in Alabama. They put a life vest on him and sent him back home at basically not expecting a lot. And within 3 weeks, God did a total miracle in his heart, and he went from like no chance to you don't need surgery. And he's a walking miracle manifestation. And maybe the greatest miracle he's seen happen lately is his daughter let him out of the state to come up here.
That's it.
And this is the first place he's been since last Thanksgiving. And so won't you stand with me? Let's welcome Pastor Bob Martin.
I'm giving this to your wife. Okay. Thank you. You may be seated. Yeah, we were talking about that on the way down, that we hadn't been out of the state of Illinois since November. Hadn't been out of our house for a lot, but Illinois is a little bit different place than most places. But yeah, God's done a great work. We got to Alabama to enjoy some time with our granddaughter, and I ended up in the hospital for a week and had 10%, what's that called? Ejection fraction in my heart. The cardiologist was so adamant, you need to get home and have immediate surgery. And I got home, and I'm a veteran, and so the VA doesn't operate in an immediate. They do a hurry up and wait like the Army did. And in the last cardiology appointment we had, they said probably stents, which is a whole lot different than open heart. Matter of fact, one of the doctors in Alabama said nuclear option is a heart transplant. And I'm thinking, this is not going to happen. I'm not going to give me somebody else's heart. Mine's good. And as you know, in 2016, I think it was, or 13, something like that, one of those two. 2013, we were in Ghana, and I died over there from a heart attack. And I don't have, my right artery is gone, basically. It's dead. And but they're not even concerned with it because God created a miracle. 2 years after that, I was walking 8 to 10 miles a day and doing 2 5Ks a month. And then you get out of the habit of doing the right things and you end up in the hospital. So I'm not getting out of the habit anymore. God's got a good work. And we're looking forward to the work that he's doing in Illinois. We're getting ready to Pentecost Sunday. There's 4 of our churches in Illinois. Pastor Vicky will be here tomorrow and this weekend with you guys. And they pastor a church that's connected to Grace Fellowship. Their church is Charis Life, and then Pastor Tim has the Tab, and then Pastor Mike has Rachel will be here tomorrow also. And there's this River of Life, and we're the 4 churches in Illinois that are part of Grace Ministries, and we're having our first Sunday service, full services. We don't care what our governor says. We're doing all the right things. We're doing the separation and all that kind of stuff, and told people you can come or you don't have to come, but our people are excited. We're going to have good service. Pentecost Sunday is the day to do it. That's right. Isn't that right? God moved Pentecost Sunday, and he took the disciples from, I'll probably get into that. He took the disciples from being sort of wishy-washy to thrust them right into the heart of ministry on Pentecost Sunday. So we should go expecting Pentecost Sunday. We should expect what God's going to do, great things that day. And if we do that, we're not going to be disappointed, are we? So I've got a word for you. And sort of as I was thinking about it on the way down, saying I don't know if teaching, it's not really teaching glory or the glory because you have the master sitting here teaching on glory. But I want to talk about the glorious church. That's us. Am I correct? Turn me over to Ephesians chapter 5. And I'm not got a lot of notes. We won't be here till I think we'll be done by midnight or so. So it's not a big deal, right? You guys got a women's conference. And actually, we thought it would be really good if Pastor Jack and I just came and took a couple of those spots and taught. No? Okay. That's good. We're going to watch Westerns then. Stay home, eat barbecue, and watch Westerns. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 27. And I believe this is what I'm going to read out of it. I believe it's the New Living Translation. It says, all that he does in us is designed to make us a mature church. A mature church. Not babies, not teenagers, but mature. In November, I went from thinking I was in my 40s to realizing I was 67. And I had arrived into maturity. And I don't mind being in my 60s. It's just that I want to be mature in my walk with God. I don't want to be a teenager in the walk with God. I don't want to be an infant. I want to be a mature person in my walk with God. He says to make us a mature church for his pleasure. Again, it's not about you and I. It's about doing what he needs done. It's about us walking at a level that he's glorified, that he's got, that he's blessed by, until we become a source of praise to him, glorious and radiant, beautiful and holy, without fault or flaw. You know, when you start talking about end times things, one of two things happens. Either people really get nervous because they start thinking, what do you mean? What do you mean end times? We're going to be going into heaven already. I want to do this, you know. I want to do that, you know. And a lot of times people with young children, they say, well, I want to see them graduate from 8th grade or this year you can't graduate from high school in Illinois. They canceled all the graduations in Illinois. And the thing is that you want to see those events. Or a lot of times people will they'll just laugh it off. You know, a lot of movies, they'll have the guy walking around he's a street guy walking around the city where the sign that says Jesus is coming back. And the only reason that Hollywood does that is to try to make fun of the fact that it's something they don't know. You and I know he's coming back, and he's coming back really soon. And the things that are going on right now in this world are lining him up for a swift return. You know, we need to realize that he wants us ready, though. We have to be ready. It says that he's coming back for a glorious church. You know, not a building. He's coming back for a glorious church. That's you and I. In Acts, and so I got to thinking about it as I was putting this guy. Well, how do we become a glorious church? What do we do? Well, I think the first thing we need to do is look at how Jesus handled it. You know, what did he do? In my notes, there we go. Got it messed up here. So what did Jesus do? Remember the old bracelets that said WWJD? You know, what would Jesus do, or what? You know, well, we should be thinking about, okay, what did he do to become who he was? Well, we're supposed to be like him. That's the reason why we have the name Christian. And it says, so we look at Luke chapter 13. And we're going to look at verse 10 through 17. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's a section here, and you know this passage. You know, he's teaching, and a woman comes up to him and was loose from her infirmity. She had been sick, and he prayed for her and healed her. Well, the religious people of the day, because it was on the Sabbath, they got upset with him. How do you dare do a work on the Sabbath? Well, there's no better day. And he challenges them, says, if you, he answers them, he said, hypocrite, verse 15 says, hypocrite, does not each one of you on the Sabbath loose his ox or donkey from the stall and lead it to water? He said, then why are you upset about doing the work of God on the Sabbath? You know, and verse 17 says, and when he has said these things, all his adversaries were put to shame, and all the multitude rejoiced for the glorious things that were done by him. Well, what glorious things were done by Jesus? Well, we know them. I mean, everywhere he went, he healed the sick, didn't he? Except for in one town, and that was the town he grew up in. He couldn't do anything. But everywhere he went, he would heal the sick. He would challenge the religious to break loose of their religion, to come into relationship. You know, the best things that ever happened to Deb and I, we got saved as teenagers but didn't walk with God. Well, a lot of times people don't walk with God because the church has built up this wall of division from the world when we're supposed to be out there loving the world. Jesus loved everybody. You think about it, with the exception of the religious. And he challenged them. And he sort of spoke down to them, didn't he? But the street people, the harlots, all of them that were out there that were contrary to the people that were in the church, he loved them, didn't he? He ate with them. He spent time with them. Matter of fact, he got chastised by the religious because he spent so much time with those that didn't know the religion that they were sharing. But he did glorious things. He challenged them to change. And he commissioned you and I, didn't he? If we look at Mark, in Mark 16, and verses 15 through 18, it says, and he said to them, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. I always like listening to Pastor Callahan talk about when he was growing up, he got saved and called in the ministry at age 5. Have you ever heard this story? And he went out, he didn't have nobody else to preach to, so he preached to the animals and the chickens, I think it was. And he preached to the chickens. Well, that's a creature, right? I'm a firm believer. I'm not an animal person. I think dog meat's probably a good delicacy. That's for Patty. We were just talking about that tonight. She said, I can't eat a dog. Well, I probably could if you had to, but I mean, but the thing is that why did I go there? But I believe this. I believe this that dogs. Well, they understand you, don't they? I mean, if you talk to the dog, say go lay down, they go lay down, right? Well, they understand you. You don't understand them. Their vocal ability was gone. Was part of the curse, I believe. So when we get to heaven, and I have a dog that's in heaven, and I'm sure that when I see Shay again, she's going to say, "Why did you do that to me on that day?" Hopefully, she'll be in a forgiving heart because she's in heaven, right? But I believe they talk. I believe that preaching to the chickens has a necessity. First off, it called Pastor Callahan and got him moving into the right direction where God wanted him for the next 100 years. You know, it says go in the world and preach the gospel to every creature. That doesn't. I think you should be out preaching, exercising your understanding, getting the word out of you, preparing yourself to actually preach to other people. And it doesn't hurt for you to preach to the dog. It doesn't hurt for you to preach to the cat. He goes on, he says, he who believes and is baptized will be saved. Now, the school that I went to a Restoration Movement school, and they believe that baptism is the inroads to salvation. It's not. That's not what the word says. It says, believe in your heart, confess with your mouth, and you are saved. Baptism, he says, he who believes and is baptized will be saved, but he who does not believe will be condemned. It doesn't say he who is not baptized will be condemned, but he who doesn't believe. So he said, and he goes on to say this, and these are signs that will follow them who believe. In my name they will cast out demons, and they will speak with new tongues. And they will take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, by no means shall harm them, and they will lay hands on the sick, and they will recover. That's a commission that you and I all own, that you and I all wear. Not just because I'm a pastor, but that's the body. We all have that responsibility. We all have been commissioned under that commission. And in the military, any veterans in here besides myself? But in the military, when you go to swear in, you make an oath of allegiance to the country, and you never, when you ETS, which is in your time of service, they don't revoke that commission, so you're always under it. Well, that's what this is once you become a Christian, this is a commission that you have for the rest of your life and a responsibility that we have for the rest of our lives. So we look at what Jesus did. He healed the sick. He says, you shall heal the sick. He preached the word. He says, you should preach the word. And that's what Jesus did. That's what helps us get to be a glorious church. Well, let's take it a little bit further. What about the disciples? Well, Pentecost Sunday is a change-up for the disciples. But look at Acts chapter 2. Acts chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. It says, and when the day of Pentecost had fully come, they were all in one place, in one accord in one place. They came looking and believing God was going to move. That's the first. When you walk in this door, it doesn't matter who's preaching. In our church, we have a lot of preachers. We have a lot of really good preachers in our church, and you have them here, right? The thing is that when you come into any church building, whether you receive while you're here or not, that's up to you. That's really up to you or me. When I go in and one of my other pastors is preaching, I go in anticipating when I leave, I'm going to be changed. When I come down here to hear Pastor Jack or hear any of the other pastors, I go into that meeting saying, I'm going to receive something tonight that's going to change my life. And that's the important part. That's all on me to receive. That's all on me to take that out. And so they came in and one accord in one place to receive from God. And what happened there? We know this story. All of heaven erupted, didn't it? Said that fire came down on them, and it was like fire on everybody's head, and there was an explosion that changed the disciples forever. Forever. They went from running, they went from hiding to being out there in the street now sharing. And all of them but one died a martyr's death. All of them but one took it to the grave. Had that ever been had anything about Jesus been a lie, you think they would have died for that? No, they wouldn't have. But because it was truth, they all lived a life of fervency. Matter of fact, in chapter 3, Peter and John are on their way to the temple again. And they run across a man that was placed at the temple every day. Every day somebody brought him, set him down, and he begged. And he begged for alms. And he would have... I've been in several places in the world, in the United States, big cities, and you see people out there asking for money. They're begging, right? But very seldom they look at you square in the eye and say, can I have some money? They're usually got their head bowed. They're not like this. And Peter and John, he's begging to them, and Peter stops and says, stop, look at us. They wanted his attention. They wanted him to take his eyes off of his problem, for one thing, and put his eyes on them. And they wanted him to take his eyes off the ground and look to the sky, look upwards towards the heavens. Amen? And the thing is that when he said, now, silver and gold we don't have. They probably had it. But that's not the answer he needed, because he had been doing that since he was a child. It says that he was born crippled. He was born with the inability to walk. And Peter says, look, such as I have, silver and gold I don't have, but what I have is going to be yours. And he healed him. And he says, stand. The man didn't just stand up. Think about this. I've had gout before in my foot. And there was one day, I don't remember, when it first hit me, I got up, I had been asleep, I got up, and all of a sudden it was like my left leg was gone. I stepped out and fell on my face. Think about someone that's never walked in their life, never had use of their legs. No, there's no muscle structure there. There's nothing for them to stand. But it didn't say he just stood up. It said that he leaped up. At the word of God penetrating his heart, it caused him to leap up and stand on feet that he never stood on before. Stand up like he had never stood before. And that was done. And he says, and Peter says, arise and walk in the name of Jesus. The disciples went from being from being very, what's the word I want? Jesus kept, he knew what was coming, but it's always interesting to me when he'd say, oh, ye of little faith. And he said, well, how long do I got to stay with you guys? How much have I got to teach you? But evidently what he taught them was enough. Think about it. How many of you have been with Pastor Jack 5 years? 10 years? Keep your hand. 15. How long have you had the church? 19 years. How many of you have been with him since the beginning? Let's go back to the 10 years. Okay, 10 years is the longest time. Most of you have been here, right? Think about this. What has changed in your life in that 10-year period? And when he gets up and preach, you come anticipating from Pastor Jack revelation in your life that when you walk out the door, you're changed. Am I correct? And you don't there's nothing that you're ever disappointed over that, right? Except for when he promotes like Tennessee stuff, right? I understand that. But if it wasn't for that, he'd be a pretty good guy. You know, the thing is that when you come in, he has spent the time, just like Jesus did with the disciples. And even though, as a pastor, sometimes am I making any headway? Am I getting anywhere with this person? Is there any change coming about? And all of a sudden, just like that, the change happens. And you know what? That happened with Pastor Jack and I as we're walking along, as we're getting taught by our pastor, Pastor Callahan. And all of a sudden, it's like, just all of a sudden, boom, it changes. And the connection that Deb and I have with Pastor Callahan goes way back into the 70s, when he was our pastor in Illinois. And it's like when we came down here several years ago, 16, 17 years ago now, and God was calling us into full-time work, and I was driving to my office as a counselor, and I was driving in, God says, call Pastor Callahan and let him know that his ministry is still alive in Illinois because you're doing it. I said, look, and I argued with God. I said, look, he's not going to know who I am. He won't remember me. And he says, do it. So I get to my office parking lot, turn the car off, get on my cell phone, and I call down, and I say, can I speak to Pascal? And it was Elizabeth at the time. I didn't know who it was, but at the time. But she says, well, just ask his tell him who's calling. So he probably won't remember me as Bob Martin. So he answers the phone. He says, Bob, how you doing? How's your mom and dad? How's your brother? I'm going, all right, God, he remembered me. But we came down and we said, we're going to be down. Can we come down? We want to have a question I'd like to ask you. We just really were looking for someone to be our covering. And I went to Bible college and seminary, but I didn't know anything about covering. It was just what God put in my heart. So we came down here. We showed up at church. He was having 2 services on Sunday at the time. And we got there in between the first service and the second. And we walked into the front, where you just sort of the little entrance area there at the church. And he's still finishing up preaching. And we walk in, and it was like, that's Dad. That's my dad. And we just sort of stood there, just relishing the moment of hearing his live. I have tapes of him from the 70s and 80s. But listening to him live again was so exhilarating for us in such a time. Well, that's the key with the disciples. Jesus spent enough time with them to change their lives. But what really changed them was the day of Pentecost. It took them from being, I don't know if we can go out, to now they're out in the streets. Now they're out changing the world. Now they're out spreading the gospel that Jesus had taught them. So what did the disciples do? They did what Jesus did. They went out and changed the people that were around them. Went out and spent time with those that needed the Lord. Well, then I thought, well, what about Paul? Well, what about Paul? Paul wasn't a disciple, but he was an apostle. And so Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, it says this. We're going to look at verses 8 through 10. It says let me back up to verse 7. It says, we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellence of the power may be of God and not in us. He goes on, verse 8 says, we are hard pressed on every side, not yet crushed. We're perplexed, but not in despair. We're persecuted, but not forsaken. Struck down, but not destroyed. Always carrying about in the body of the dying of the Lord Jesus Christ, that the life of Jesus may be manifested in our body. You know, there's been many times over the years, you and I both have had times where we thought, I can't take it anymore. I can't do anymore. I feel like everything's coming against me. The thing is that Paul had those same moments. But what did he do? He turned it around back to God and says, I can't do this on my own. I can't stand by myself. I need you to stand with me. I need you to stand up inside of me. Paul always looked to God because he wanted to be a part of that glorious church. Now, Paul obviously is a major player in the glorious church, but we still have that to go on. We still have to move forward. Well, I asked the Lord, I said, well, show me things that put us in that position to be the glorious church. Go back to Ephesians. In Ephesians chapter 5, we're going to look at 8 points, really 9. I should back it up and say there's 9 things, and because 2 of them are right there in the front of what makes us, how we become the glorious church, how we stay the glorious church. In verse 1, it says, therefore be imitators of God. In other words, we've got to become God-like. Well, how is God? What is God? God, first off, loves everybody, doesn't he? There's not one person in the world that he doesn't love. Now, there's a lot of people that don't love him. There's a whole lot of people that are rebelling and make fun of him. I mean, I'll just watch Facebook. Put something on Facebook about God and see how many people will reject it, how many people will make fun of it. You know, Debbie has a first cousin that was raised in a church home. I mean, his mom and dad were devout believers. But I have to question whether he is anymore, just by the things he says, by the way he makes fun of things. Now, he may think he is, but he's not living it. You can tell by what he says. By what someone says is important as we listen to them. It says, be imitators of God. That's the first point. Then the second one is this, walk in love. And it doesn't say walk in, we're not supposed to just love your family, not supposed to just love those that love you. Am I correct? We're supposed to love everybody. Jesus loved everybody. Jesus was out there ministering to people. And you know what's going to change the world? The love of God. Where the church went wrong is they started putting all these rules and regulations and made people feel like they weren't good enough. I mean, look, there was a time when I first started preaching, if I'd have got up to preach in a church dressed like I am right now, they'd have ran me out. Now, the first guy I ever see get up and preach without a tie and a suit was, he preaches in San Antonio, Texas. Rick, I can't think of his last name, Rick Godwin. I'm in a church in Morton. It was a conference. I'm sitting there, and I'm sitting on an aisle seat, and this guy walks by, and he's in khakis and a polo shirt. And I thought, who's this? He walks up. He's the preacher. This guy can preach, okay? I love his preaching. I love him. And the thing is that was the first time I ever seen anybody get up and preach like that. Now, there was in churches that I preached at before, if I'd have got up and dressed in jeans and tennis shoes, matter of fact, this is a first. Just to let you know, I've never preached in tennis shoes before in a church building, But I'm on restriction. I have to wear them. Not just teasing. Actually, they're very comfortable. If you have any feet problem, Hokas are the ones you want to get. They're good shoes. So I don't get any commission from them, but I just thought I'd let you know. But anyway, if but our responsibility is not. It's not a matter of how we look. It's not a matter of how we dress. It's a matter that we have to love people. We have to learn to love people, and once you start loving them, then you can tell them about the things of God, because it'll open up the door. When you start treating people, no matter what they are, who they are, and it's hard when you've been harmed by somebody. But the thing is about forgiveness; it's a requirement. For a believer, forgiveness is a requirement, and if you can't forgive them if you don't love them, you have to love them. You have to learn to love. I mean, the reason why I hang out with Pastor Jack, I've learned to love him. I've had to love him. I've had to forgive him. I don't care if he is from Tennessee. I have to love him, right? we learn to walk in love. It says, and that's what makes us glorious. That's what takes us to that next level. And go on, and the next one is in verse 8. It says, and you were once in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. What does that mean by walking as children of light? It means that we learn to behave like we're supposed to behave. How we're supposed to treat people. How we're supposed to love God. When we walk into a building of darkness, the light should come on because we're there. What's the building of darkness? It's places where most of the people in the building don't know or don't love God. But how do we change that? We walk in and we love them, first off. We don't walk in and put them down. I mean, I know Christians. Have you ever seen Christians that they'll see some guy? What does the sinner do? Sins, right? You ever seen a Christian that when they see somebody sin, they almost snarl at them? I know people like that. And I've taught over the years to try to challenge those people without me saying, Sylvia, don't do that no more. I learned I had to pick a name because I knew we didn't have anybody Sylvia in our church, right? Sylvia's. Now that song's going to play in my head. Why did you do that? Now I hear that guy's voice. But Pastor Jack's favorite band is the Eagles. So you want to play something good for him? Play Eagles song. Anyway, so we walk into that building, and we treat people with dignity, with respect, with understanding. And I don't care if they just did something bad to you. Those are the ones you really want to show the love to. Those are the ones you really want to be a light to, because they're the ones that are hurting the most. They didn't necessarily know that they did it, but the enemy used them to try to get to you. And they've been played. And so you need to show them the light of God that dwells in you, and show them the love and the forgiveness and the compassion that they're lacking. If you think about and I do counseling, and most of the time in counseling, I find that someone that is hurting and is really a mean person is because somebody back in the past had really done something to them, or they have been so hurt by something or someone that that's all they know how to do is lash back out. Well, I want to be a light to somebody's life. I know you do too. And in order for us to do that, we've got to get beyond us. Got to get beyond my hurt feelings. I get to beyond my ego area and extend to them that light that God has placed in me. It says, don't hide it under a bushel. Don't put it away where people can't see. but put it up on top of the mountain so that people can be drawn to that light that's in you. In verse 15, it says this, and then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. What does circumspectly mean? Huh? What is it? Anybody know what it means? It means looking at it with panoramic vision. Don't be tunneled. Don't look with tunnel vision, but look at the whole atmosphere. Walk about and see everything that's going on in your area, everything that's everywhere you go. I'm very observant. I like watching people. It's my favorite pastime. And I'll go to a mall or I'll go somewhere and I'll just sit. I love to see people. I go to a restaurant. I'll watch people, you know. And the thing is that I want to understand a way to get to people's lives. I want to understand a way how to touch them. We'll go to I do this all the time when we go shopping. You ever been a cashier, in line in cashier, and the person in front of you is just really being obnoxiously bad to that cashier? Like that cashier has to put up with it, and they don't deserve that. Well, then I'll go up and I'll think, well, okay, how can I make them smile? How can I turn the bad experience they just had, or if I go up to and maybe I'm the first one there, and this cashier is just like, there's an old movie, what's it called? Music Box. If you get a chance to see it, there's no actual words in it at all, but it's all about somebody who got saved, and the music box is the Holy Spirit that He's given, and every time He opens it, it sings. And the only words that are in is they have a 4-poster bed in their home, and in the middle of the night, there's these 4 angels singing at each post in the bed as there was a microphone saying, hallelujah. He said, oh, no, you wake up the wife. And the thing is, no, you're supposed to share that, you know. And the thing is that, why did I tell you that story? Because you may be the only person that they look like they're just going through the motion, just like he was at work that day in that movie. He's just going through the motion, and all of a sudden something changed. Be the change agent in somebody's life. When you go to that place and you see somebody just like they're just doing it by remote, they're not even invested in it, they're just doing it because they've done it 1,000 times that day. Find a way to speak into their lives. You don't have to quote the scripture chapter and verse. You don't have to say, John 3:16 says this, or Romans 10:12 says. No, just let the word of God that dwells in you, let it come out in your words. In other words, in my case, it's Bobby's. And I always have great jokes, always tell great jokes. I called my grandson up on the way down here, and I wanted to tell him a joke. I wanted to tell him a joke. I got to tell you this one. Actually, I had to do this. I was a National Guard recruiter, and I had the captain was supposed to go teach speak at this event for a businessman, or I don't remember what it was. Anyway, so he says, Sergeant Martin, I can't go. You need to go. And I'm going, why me? Why do I have to go? I don't even like talking in front of people. I mean, God was birthing in me ministry. So I went, and so I studied, and I was reading a book. I don't remember what it was. It's how to open up with a joke and this kind of stuff. And so I found a joke in there. And so I thought, I'm going to start with this. It's Flag Day and all this kind of stuff. And so I'm going to start with this joke. And so I get this joke, and I write it down on my piece of paper. And before that, they eat. And I wasn't eating anything. The guy sitting next to me, the older guy, says, this is the first time you ever done this? I said, yeah, how do you know? He says, you're not eating anything. The food's good. So I didn't eat anything. I went to McDonald's afterwards, I think. But so I'm sitting there, and I get up there to tell this joke. And so I get up there, and I say, you know what? I sort of feel like a mosquito at a nudist colony right now. Now, I have to tell you, I was getting ready to talk about the scripture. But I started out with that joke. You know what mosquitoes like in a nudist colony? They don't know where to begin. You know, so it's like I called up my grandson on the way down. He's what, 10? I did it again. Probably shouldn't have told you that joke, but this is not much better. I told my grandson, because he laughs at my jokes, really, he gets into it. Grandpa, that was a good joke. And the thing is that I called him up and said, I just had a big bug hit my windshield, Dante. He said, what was the last thing that went through his head? His butt. And he laughed. That was a good one too, wasn't it, Patty? Yes, Patty liked it. I'm in good. The thing is that I don't know why I told you those jokes even. The thing is that we want to put ourselves in a position to look at our surroundings and how can I affect that surrounding to where I bring the glory of God out. Now, obviously, those two jokes don't bring the glory of God out, but hey, live with it. says, but the thing is that what can I do to change that atmosphere? What can I do to make somebody smile? That's becoming that glorious church. Verse 16 it says, redeeming the time. I want to make every good use of my time. And I know that my wife goes, yeah, whatever. I told you to get the dishes unloaded before we left. I asked you to wrap the vacuum before. I was making good use of my time. I wasn't doing that stuff, But I have to tell you, my time will be used again when I get back to do those things. But we want to redeem the time, because time's short, beloved. We know that. We see it. We see it in the news every day that we're living in the last days. We're living in a time where we, the church, as sprinkled out across the world as we are, we, the church, have to rise up and redeem our time, because it's time to share the Word of God. We're getting ready to move into a great revival. This I know. And we're getting ready to see the things of God like we've never seen them before in our time. And I listen to the prophets. I just watch the news. I look at what's going on. I'm looking at circumspectly across the world in which I live and hear the Word of God being preached. And I go, it's time. God's coming back, and it's quick. Now, maybe 25 years, but all I know is He's coming back soon because of the way things are lining up. So I want to redeem the time to do what I need to do today. There are a whole lot of people, when Deb and I first got saved in the 70s, that got saved just a few years before us, and they were being told Jesus is coming back, and they weren't doing. They were just waiting. They were waiting on Him, and a lot of them, they weren't going to go into anything. They were like held motionless. Well, no, I can't go to college. I can't do this. I can't do that because Jesus is coming back. Well, the bad part about that is they weren't redeeming the time to be productive towards the future if He didn't come back for 50 years. And it's been about 50 years since all that. When the last big revival hit America was the Jesus movement. And when it hit, young people, hippies were getting saved and changing the church. They're the beginning of it. They saw something on Facebook here a while back with all the stuff that's going on. You can't get a haircut, and pot's legal. Says the hippies won, So the hippies were right. That's what they said. You can't get a haircut, and pot's legal, and you can't get a haircut. The hippies love it. That's great. Anyway, yeah, you did ask me, and it was a long drive. No, I just teasing. So we got to redeem the time. We got to use our time wisely in order to rise up and be the glorious church. Verse 17 says, and the next point is, understand that what the will of God is. What is the will of God for your life? Ask Him. What is it that you want me to do? Our oldest 3 grandchildren have graduated from high school. We have 2 of them in college. The other one's going to go to styling cosmetology school. And then we have 2 grandsons. They're only 2 years out. They'll be off to college. And I asked him, I said, what is it that you want to do in life? What is it that you feel like you're called to do? And the thing is that that's just Grandpa asking. They should be asking God, what is it that you want of me? What is it that you desire of me? But you know what? Just because they're teenagers, well, our oldest one's not a teenager anymore. She'll be 22 this year. But the thing is that, what about you? When was the last time you said, God, what is it you would have me to do? What is it you would have me to do this day? Get down to the nitty-gritty. What is it this day that you would have me to do? Where would you have me to be today? Well, I've got to go to work. Okay, well, what would you have me to do at work this day? What would you have me to do this hour? Understanding what His will is in your life and as it operates in your life is so vitally important. It's so vitally important. Well, I'd like to watch that show tonight, but I really should be reading this book. I really should be reading the Word. Okay, what is it? What is His priorities in your life? Been off since November. Really didn't do any counseling. A little bit at the end of Well, and actually, since the quarantine in Illinois, I really couldn't do anything. So our counseling office has been shut down. And I have a planner. I use a planner every year. I've always had a planner. Well, this year I had bought a really nice hardbound planner. It's a Christian planner. It had all kinds of things in there, and I was working it. I lost it. I have no idea where it's at. I've looked, and I've asked God, bring my planner back to me. Bring it back. Have somebody call and say, hey, we found this. This is yours. This is yours. The thing is that without the planner, sometimes I didn't know what I was supposed to do because I needed. Debbie says you need to write down everything. Write it down. Somebody would call me and say, will you do this? And she says, write it down so you don't forget. I don't forget unless I want to forget. When she asks me to do something, I forget. Write it down. I don't have to. She gives me a stamp with a foot. No, I'm just kidding. The thing is that what is it? I want to understand what God's will is in my life, and so I do a lot of planning. I write things down all the time. I have all kinds of journals. I've written things down. I'll write down a note here or there. I'll write when I'm working on a sermon. I'll write down sentences that I want in the sermon, and they're never in the order that they're supposed to be in. But then as I go back through as I'm preparing, all of a sudden they start falling into place. I want to know what His will is when I preach. I want to know what His will is when I do anything I do at all. And I know the conversations I used to have with Him before I actually totally gave my life to Him. I would talk. I would say, I know that there's something you have me to do, but can I just keep doing what I'm doing right now? How many people have done that? Well, God said, He gave me a little bit of rope. He gave me a little leeway. Thing is that when He said it's time, it's time. And I want to do His will. I want it to be my purpose in life to do His will. In verse 18, it says this, do not be drunk with wine, which is a dispensation, but be filled with the Spirit. I want to be filled. I want to know. I hear Pastor Jack talk about dreams and things God's given him over the years, 30 years ago, stuff like that. And that's where I want to be. I want to, we can live back, and I'm not saying this about this, but there are people that, like Pastor Jack, that God spoke to him 30 years ago. Well, what He told them 30 years ago, they're still not doing. They're still not. It's not Pastor Jack. I'm just saying is that what God did in your life 30 years ago isn't what you live on the rest of your life. That's the beginning. That's the movement forward. And it was a few years back in my journaling that God reminded me of when I was about 9 or 10 years old. And the only thing, I shared a bedroom with my brother till we was juniors in high school, I think. And I had this long closet that was my area. He didn't come in there, and I had stuff on the wall drawings that I did, and I had a desk in there and the whole thing, and that was my private area. And I had ran across a track, and I may have told you this before here, and the track, I'm reading through the track, and I wasn't raised in a Christian home. We were heathens to the max and knew how to do it well. And I'm reading this track, and the only thing I was told as a kid was, when you die, you go to heaven. Well, that's a lie. To say, well, everybody that dies goes to heaven, that's a lie. And so I'm reading this track, and I get to the end of the track, Aunt Mary's dead. And it's talking about how the people go, oh, it's nice, she's in heaven in one room. And then all of a sudden you see Aunt Mary, she's in the depths of hell, crying out. And I get to the end of the track, and I start crying. And I cried out to a God I didn't know. And I said, I don't want to be like her. And He laid His hand on me at that point in time. I know He did. He laid His hand on my life because of what He showed me every point in my life afterwards that His hand kept me out of bad areas. I mean, I went to Vietnam and never touched a weapon. You don't go to war and not touch a weapon. I came back unscathed from Vietnam. Well, I've got some things going on in my body physically due to Agent Orange, but I mean, I didn't have any scars, didn't have no mental issues. As I wandered through different things, He protected me so many times, over and over and over. And when it was time for Him to say, now's the time, Bob, to step in, Deb and I were in our living room on, I think it was a Sunday night even, maybe, or it might have been a Saturday night, I don't know. We're watching TV, and we're watching the old PTL Club with Jim Bakker. And we got down on our knees and gave our lives to Jesus Christ. And that was the day, May 4th, 1979, that God came into our lives with reality, and we turned it around, and we began walking with Him. And every step of the way, and we got more filled with Him, Every day is a new filling. Every day is a refilling. It's sort of like you go to these places and you can sit there all day and they just keep refilling your coffee cup, or refilling your soda. And that's a great place to be, isn't it? Because you can sit there all day long and drink from the same cup and only pay for one, right? And drink coffee all day long. What a great deal. That's the way it is with the Holy Spirit. Once you're filled, he just keeps refilling it. You use it up, he refills it. And the thing is that every time he refills it, it's stronger. It gets better. Every time you get filled even more, and it gets to a new level, and a new level, and a new level, and a new level. And at some point in time, you're overrunning with the Spirit of God in your life. And that's where we want to be. That's how we become that glorious church. Then the next one is verse 20. It says, then, giving thanks always for all things to God, the Father, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Giving him thanksgiving for everything that's going on in our lives. The glorious church understands where the blessings come from. It's not something that I just happen to be at the right place at the right time, that I went to the car dealer and got the right deal because they messed up a tag on the windshield and they gave it to me. And they realized it was wrong, but they gave it to me. That wasn't them. That was God working because he knew that was what I could afford. It was, understanding that, giving thanks to him for everything, even the tough times. Our granddaughter, our second oldest granddaughter, goes to the University of Kentucky. And she applied for nursing school. And she's gotten that a delay. And she was disappointed because it was delayed. It's not forever ended. She gets to do it again in the fall. She gets to reapply and get to redo it again. And the thing is now she did wrong. But the thing is, she has to learn to give thanks, even in the disappointments. Even when things are tough, we give thanks. And my grandkids, especially her, I give her a hard time because she goes to the University of Kentucky. I say, if you're really smart, you'd have went to Transylvania University. That's a good school. With a name like that, that has to be a good school, right? And it's actually the oldest school in Kentucky. It's the oldest university in Kentucky. And it was founded by the Presbyterian Church. And that's where they sent ministers to train for the ministry, is at Transylvania University. And so I've got a t-shirt that says Transylvania on it. And then my oldest granddaughter, she goes to a great school, University of Alabama. It's an excellent school, powerful school, beautiful school. You can set all of Kentucky in the quad. No, I'm just. But anyway, so I always give Carly a hard time. I said, well, if you'd have went to a good school, so anyway, I probably shouldn't have said. Oh, Alabama? Yeah. And I'm in Kentucky now. I should watch what I say, huh? I have both, and my oldest granddaughter, I have a lot of Alabama stuff, but I grew up as in Alabama type of setting. But my second oldest granddaughter goes to Kentucky. I said, look, Kylie graduates this coming year. I said, when she's done, I'll put all my Alabama stuff away, and I'll just wear Kentucky, because I wear Kentucky stuff. I brought a Kentucky sweatshirt with me this weekend, and that's a good my Alabama hat, but I brought my Kentucky sweatshirt. The thing is that give thanks in everything. And so I know that I started to say was Carly always gives thanks for Grandpa, because she knows Grandpa is just a great guy, so she gives thanks every day for Grandpa. But give thanks for all things, it says, because God's given us blessings in everything. And then the last thing I want to share with you is submitting to one another in the fear of God. One of the best things we can do is become servants. Why? Because Pastor Jack and I have that title in front of our names, but that's not, when we enter into heaven, they're not going to go, hey, how you doing, Pastor Jack? Hey, how you doing, Pastor Bob? They're not going to enter it. That's not how we're going to enter it. It's going to say, welcome home, thou good and faithful servant. We all get the same title, don't we? We all get the same structure. Why? Because that's the way God sees us. What we get to do, the office we get to hold here, is all well and good, but that doesn't get me into heaven. Just because I have pastor in front of my name doesn't get me into heaven. Our responsibility is to submit to one another. You know what makes a good marriage? Submission to one another. Matter of fact, that's what he's getting ready to go into. Paul's getting ready to shift into that marriage structure in this next verse. He's talking about submitting, the husband submitting to the church, the wife submitting to the husband. And I know there's going to be a whole lot of that good teaching this weekend about how you need to submit to your husband. I understand that's what they're going to teach this weekend, right? And it's a women's conference. That's what they're supposed to teach, right? The thing is that, and I do want you to know if she says anything bad about me this weekend, you know it's not true, right? And you'll need to let me know on Sunday so I can straighten it all out. The thing is that submitting to one another, but submitting to God. Submitting. How do we become glorious? We become glorious because we're willing to submit to one another. We're willing to stand with one another. We're willing to walk these points out in our life at a level that God is glorified by it. That's what makes us a glorious church, is when God is glorified. And as long as we allow ourselves to be put in a position that we're submitting, if we can submit to one another, I don't have a problem with submitting to God. You know, Debbie will say, if my husband will submit to God, I don't have a problem in submitting to him. That's what she says. Well, the thing is that's not words that I put in her mouth, but we don't submit. She doesn't just submit to me. We submit to one another. Well, that's working the word in our lives. And when we submit to one another, it's easy to submit to God. You know, a lot of times people have a problem submitting to God because they haven't had a good father in their life, or they haven't had a good parent, a mother in their life. And so God gets the brunt of that. But when you submit to God, things change in your life. Like I said, for years I wandered and I would argue with God. And the thing is that when I decided to finally submit to Him, the path that He had laid out for me when the day I was born, all of a sudden was in front of me. I didn't, for a long time, didn't know the walk that I was on. I had no idea as I started to take classes to go into the ministry. And when we first started going to the ministry, she went to become a nurse, which she retires from at the end of this month. Next week is her last day as an active nurse. She's always going to be a nurse, but I mean, the thing is she doesn't have to work for it anymore. She can just work at home, and I'm not going to pay her what they pay her. That's it. Not going to do it. The thing is we've got a taste of retirement, years of being together, all these times as we went through this quarantine, and there's some rules that need to change around our house, and I'm the one that has to change. But I mean, we love one another so much that I can joke like that. And she knows there's nothing meant by it too much. But it's like there's not. The thing is that as we move forward, as we start setting ourselves before God and say, "I'll do what you need me to do, Father." All of a sudden, all of the glory of heaven comes upon the church, us as a group, not this building, not my building, not the building down the street, but the church. And as the church rises up as the glorious church, we're going to see God's hand move mightily upon this land. And I believe that over the next few months, as the devil rages, it's going to get worse. He's going to rage more because he knows what's in store. He can't stop it, but he knows what's in store. He can't prevent what's going to happen in November from happening. But when it happens, and the man that leads our country is a man of God and changes, then there's a lot of things he says I don't agree with. There's a lot of things. You know what? I didn't ask for a preacher to be my pastor. I wanted a man that God can use. Huh? What'd I say? I didn't want a preacher to be my pastor. I meant to be my president. Yeah, I do want a preacher to be my pastor. But come think of it, I'd like to have a preacher that pays my pastor. My church, I'd like to have a preacher that preach. The thing is that we have to realize that if we're going to be the glorious church, we've got to do the things that make us that. And I believe in that chapter 5 of Ephesians, it lays it all out for us. And it lays us out an easy piece-by-piece instruction for us to get there as a church. Amen? I love you guys. Thanks for having me tonight. If you want prayer, we'll be glad to pray with you. But I know you're a praying church, and I know that your pastor takes care of a lot of that. So you want anything, Debbie? You have a mic. She's good? All right. See? Thank you very much.
Hallelujah. That was good, wasn't it? You know, sometimes I feel like I'm his straight man. Like I'm Dean Martin to his Jerry Lewis, or I'm Bud Abbott to his Lou Costello, you know. Hallelujah. We're going to take up a love offering for these two.